Hello everyone, welcome to Primetime Recaps. Please like and subscribe to support the channel, it will make us happy and help us keep making videos like this. Today, I'll be explaining a movie, titled Holes, released in the year 2003. Warning! Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The movie opens in a desert, where some teenagers wearing prisoners' uniform are digging holes under the hot sun. A guy named Bath Bag gets so tired of the hard labor and purposely get bitten by a rattlesnake on the leg, in order to liberate himself from working. Meanwhile, somewhere in the town, a baseball Snickers falls on a good-hearted teenager boy named Stanley Yelnats, making him fall on the ground. The Yelnats family are trying to invent a cure for smelling feet, so he decides to take the stinky shoes home. While on his way, the police accuse him of stealing a well-known baseball player sneaker, which he donated to charity. The policeman takes the young boy to his parents, and they get astonished to see different pairs of shoes in all parts of the apartment. The police leave the house certain that Yelnats stole the celebrity sneakers. His family believes that there is a curse on the male children of the Yelnats family, and that's the reason Stanley Jr. is unfortunate. The court sentenced Stanley to Camp Green Lake, a juvenile work camp for his alleged crime, where he has to spend 18 months on hard labor. The camp is located in the desert in a small oasis. Upon arrival, Stanley sees the camp counselor, who introduces himself as Mr. Sir. He tells Stanley not to think of a means to escape the camp. For hundreds of miles, there is only desert without a single body of water. Trying to escape will only lead the person to get bitten by venomous reptiles and the claws of predators. They give Stanley a uniform as a prisoner as well as a shovel. He is informed about his duties each day. He will have to dig a hole 5 feet deep despite the danger of the desert Sunday. The correctional camp psychologist with nickname Mom introduces Stanley to the other prisoners they've been assigned to. The inmate responds only to their nicknames X-Ray, Armpit, Squid, Zigzag, Magnet, and Zero, who is the youngest. He was given the nickname because he is always quiet. Stanley joins the squad to replace Bath Bag, who was earlier bitten by a rattlesnake, and the guys didn't welcome him warmly. During lunch, Stanley explains what brought him into the camp. He says that he was wrongfully arrested of stealing a pair of baseball shoes that Clyde Livingston, a famous baseball player, had donated to charity. As Zero hears his story, he breaks his silence for the first time and asks if the sneakers had red crosses on them, and Stanley affirms it. Later that night, Stanley recalls his father telling him about their great-grandfather, Stanley Yelnats I. He is the cause of their family curse. He had made money in the past in the stock market, but he was cheated by a woman with the nickname Kissing Kate Barlow. In a flashback, the lady who is a fugitive operating in the Wild West and was famous for kissing her victims before they died, by leaving a sign of lipstick on their faces. Elijah Yelnats, his great-grandfather, worked for Morris Menke, shoveling manure out of his barn in Latvia. Elijah thought Maury's daughter, Myra, was very beautiful. He goes to a fortune teller, Madame Zeroni, for advice about his destiny. She recommends that he should go to America, where her son has gone, that his future should be there, instead of with Myra, who is empty-headed. Elijah didn't listen and still went ahead to ask Menke for permission to marry his daughter, but Menke says that Igor has offered her his fattest pig. To prove her point about Myra, Madame Zeroni advised Elijah to take a young pig and carry it up the mountain every day to drink from the stream, so that as the pig grows, it would become bigger and stronger and could be given to her father for his blessing. After few weeks of completing the task, Stanley returned with the gift to Menke's house, and he allows the daughter to choose, but as the fortune teller rightly said, Myra was very foolish and indecisive that she couldn't choose between Elijah and the ugly man who also brought a pig. In anger, Elijah tells the girl to go ahead and marry the man, and takes Madame Zeroni's advice and heads to America, but they forgot the promise he made to carry Madame Zeroni up to the same mountain and give her a drink from the stream so that she too would gain strength, if at all he wants to be spared the curse of his male lineages forever. Back in the present, after working in the camp for a while, Stanley gets used to the rules and hard labor. He observes that the boys have no idea about why they are digging the holes. Stanley writes to his parents and lies that he is faring well at camp, to avoid them from getting worried. Meanwhile, Stanley finds a fossil and gives it to Mom, with the intent he will be given a day off for his findings, but instead the psychologist convinces him that the warden doesn't want to know if he finds any fossils. He adds that there was a lake on this land and all the land around it is owned by the warden's grandfather. Another flashback to 100 years ago reveals when the warden's grandfather, an African American called Sam, ruled the town when it was once a thriving lake town. He was selling miracle onions, which he says has a cure for all diseases, and scare away poisonous lizards. Sam really liked the local teacher, Miss Catherine, which he gave a sack of onions, and in exchange she gives him a jar of peaches she picked. Everyone had a crush on the beautiful teacher, so they watched the duo with envy. In present day, X-Ray walks up to Stanley and tells him that he finds anything next time, he should bring it to him. Stanley is slowly accepted into the team and is given the nickname, Caveman. While reading a letter written by his mum, Stanley laughs at the story she has written to him, and Zero asks him what is funny about the letter and then opens up to Stanley that he can't read. He then pleads with Stanley to teach him how to read and write, but Stanley says that he gets tired from digging every day after work and won't be able to meet up. The next day while digging, Stanley finds a tube of lipstick that belonged to Kissing Kate Barlow unknowing to them, and then gives it to X-Ray because he hadn't gotten a day off, and he gives it to Mom. As soon as the warden, who is a woman, hears about the finding, she arrives at the camp and gives X-Ray the day off in 6 months and instructs others to finish digging up the site. We are taken back in time again, where Sam offers to help repair Catherine's schoolhouse, in exchange for her signature peaches. Catherine agrees and the duo gradually begins to bond. Following a night school class, Catherine starts courting the town's owner but was rejected by him. Fortunately, Sam and Catherine start getting really close. Even though he was done with the repair work, the duo then grew fond of each other that they can't even stay away from each other. Surprisingly, Sam builds up the courage to visit Catherine and they kiss, but unknowingly to them, the town owner sees them and decides to get revenge by burning the school. In fear, Catherine goes to the local sheriff for aid, but instead, he mocks her, claiming that her man will be executed soonest. Same night, they shot Sam in his boat and Catherine witnessed it. After a while, Catherine pays the sheriff a visit to revenge her lover's death and kills him, and afterwards leaves a kiss on his cheek. After that she begins her journey as an outlaw with the name, Kissing Kate. The granddaughter of the town owner has a temper which makes her orders teenagers to dig 24 hours daily, in order to find Kate's treasure. Mr. Sir get water which he offers to the boys. When Mr. Sir isn't looking, a boy named Magnet steals a bag of seeds from his truck, but as Mr. Sir notices this, he goes back to the dig site and sees the boys throwing the bag of seeds back and forth and it falls at Stanley's feet. Regardless, Stanley does not implicate anyone in the group and accepts that he is to be blamed. Mr. Sir reports the boy to the warden so she can punish him for stealing, but instead, the warden rebukes Mr. Sir for distracting the boy from doing his job. Prior to leaving, Stanley observes the posters in the warden's office which shows that Kissing Kate is wanted. As he returns to the desert digging, his friends call a hero and Zero digs a hole for him to show appreciation. In return, Stanley then offers to teach Zero how to read and write. As he recalls what he found in the hole, he guesses that what he earlier found while digging was a tube of lipstick with the name Kate Barlow, and then tells Zero about it. While conversing, Zero unveils that his real name is Hector Zeroni, which shows that the boy is related to Madame Zeroni, the fortune teller who laid a curse on Stanley's family years ago, but unknowingly to the boys, their destinies are closely linked as they continuously bond. Zero tells Stanley about the story of how his mother left him alone at the park and vanished. While they are having lunch, Zigzag get into a heated quarrel with Stanley, and as soon as the warden gets there, he finds out from the boys that Zero is doing some of Stanley's work, in exchange for Stanley to teach him how to read and write. Stanley attempts to convince them that Zero is intelligent and just needs a little touch, but instead Mom makes a fool of him. After Mom insults him, Zero retaliates by hitting him with his shovel and runs away into the depths of the desert. Later that night, Stanley is thinking about his friend that ran off, and then he recalls his grandfather's stories of how Yelnats I survived 16 days in the desert. When Kate Barlow Robin's wagon, he found his salvation in a place called God's Finger, but because he was under pressure, he could never explain to anyone where it happened. The following day Stanley sets out to rescue his runaway friend, and steals Mr. Sir's car, and after driving it for a short while, it falls into one of the holes. He then decides to continue on foot and deep into the desert while the rest of the squad hails him. After few hours of roaming through the desert under the scorching sun, Stanley eventually sees Zero taking shelter under the remains of Sam's boat. Zero, now stranded in the desert, offers Stanley the last jar of sploosh he found there. Stanley, knowing that they can't survive in the desert for much longer, heads over to a mountain called God's Thumb, and then realizes that it is the mountain his grandfather told him about in his story about Yelnats I. The duo decides to climb the mountain. While climbing, Stanley gets hold of a fragile rock and he almost falls off. Zero hands a shovel over to him to aid him so he can use it to climb up, and this makes Zero hurt his palm severely, but luckily, he saves Stanley from falling off. The duo almost reached the top, but because Zero was tired, he falls unable to move any further. Then they decide to take a break to regain their strength. Zero reveals to Stanley that he ended up at the camp because he stole the same sneakers from the orphanage and threw them off the bridge, where Stanley got it from, because he was afraid of being arrested. Zero faints after he confessed, then his friend carries him on his back to the top of the mountain. Unknowingly, Stanley breaks the family curse, because Zero is a descendant of Madame Zeroni, and fulfills the promises made by Elia, his great-grandfather. By Zero drinking from the creek and eating the same onion, Sam grew close to the water. However, Stanley's father eventually finds the solution to an odor-eliminating mixture that he has been trying all his life to create, through the addition of peaches and onions, which shows that their family curse is broken, and this leaves them happy. Stanley's lawyer arrives at the camp and informs the warden that Stanley is innocent and must be taken home. Moreover, the warden refuses to unveil that Stanley has already escaped from the camp and might even be dead. Back in time again, Kate Barlow finds Sam's boat and sits close to it, recalling her former lover. The town's owner approached her and threatened her to reveal where Yelnats hid the stolen treasure. She tells them that they can dig for 100 years and will never find it. Kate then allows herself to be bitten by a yellow-spotted lizard on the arm. She suffers for a while and soon dies. After the incident, more than one generation of the owner has dug through the owner's lake in search of the hidden treasure, without any positive result. Back in the present, Stanley and Zero decides to go back to Camp Green Lake to dig the hole, in which Stanley finds the tube of lipstick, feeling lucky all of a sudden. The warden and he gang finds and almost takes the coveted treasure from the boys, but her plans fail due to the venomous lizards that moves around the boys and the treasure chest. Later that day, a lawyer arrives at the excavation site accompanied with the police. The warden accuses the boys of stealing the treasure and attempting to escape, but Zero notices Stanley Yelnats' name on the truck, and he and Stanley is released from the camp along with the treasure, while the warden and her followers are detained. As Stanley is beginning to leave, rains fall on Camp Green Lake, because it's been years it rained in the desert. Stanley bids farewell to his elated crew and he and Zero head back to town. Upon arriving home, the Yelnats family claimed ownership of the chest and its content, and they decide that half of the money should go to Zero. After paying a private detective, Zero finally manages to find his mother, who has been in search of him. In the end, the teenage boys are now leaving as neighbors, and their juvenile inmates who were declared free after they closed down Camp Green Lake. They all play and have fun. I hope you like the movie. Please turn on the bell icon to be the first to watch our videos when we post contents like this. You can also suggest a movie you'll love us to explain in the comment section.